Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. There was a time when Stacey and I were inseparable. We had the kind of love people envied, the kind that made every moment feel like something out of a movie. We talked for hours about nothing and everything, laughing at jokes only we understood. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. But then, slowly, almost unnoticeably, things began to change. Conversations became shorter. The warmth in her voice faded. The little things, her reaching for my hand without thinking, her head resting on my shoulder after a long day, stopped. Nights that used to be filled with passion turned into silence. She would roll away from me in bed, her back facing me like a quiet rejection. Weeks would pass by without intimacy, without even a real kiss. I tried to convince myself it was normal, that this was just part of marriage, that stress, routine, and life had a way of making things dull. But deep down, I wanted things to work out between us so badly. I decided to try, to make an effort, to remind her of what we used to be. So one day I left work early. I stopped by the store, carefully picking out ingredients for her favorite meal, one I hadn't cooked in a long time, along with her favorite wine, then headed home. I set the table, dimmed the lights, even played some soft music. I wanted the night to feel special, to remind her of who we used to be. 30 minutes later, she walked through the door, dropping her purse on the counter like any other day. When she saw the table, she didn't smile. She didn't look touched or excited. Instead, she sighed. "Oh, James, you shouldn't have done all this." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "I just wanted to do something nice for you," I said, forcing a smile. She looked at the table, then back at me. "I already ate." I blinked. "What?" "I grabbed something with Zoe after work. I didn't know you were planning this." She didn't even try to take a bite. Didn't even sit with me. Just said she was tired and went straight to bed. I sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched food, feeling like a fool. A few days later, I left work early again. I hadn't planned it. I just couldn't focus. Something felt off. Stacey had been distant for months, but after the way she dismissed my surprise dinner, that feeling had only gotten worse. On my way home, I thought about stopping to pick up flowers. I even slowed down when I passed a florist, but something in my gut told me it wouldn't matter, that no bouquet, no gesture, would fix whatever was wrong between us. When I walked into the house, it was eerily quiet. I expected to find Stacey on the couch, watching TV or scrolling through her phone since she had the day off. But it felt like no one was home. No TV playing in the background, no clinking of dishes in the kitchen. Just silence. That was strange. Her car was still in the driveway, so she wasn't out running errands either. I frowned, making my way toward the bedroom. That's when I heard her voice. She was on the phone, laughing. I walked closer, my heartbeat picking up, my gut already twisting before I even knew why. "I'm so bored, Zoe. You have no idea. James is just... Ugh, I can't even pretend anymore." I froze mid-step. My breath caught in my throat as I pressed my back against the wall, just a few steps away from the door. "I mean, even in bed, Zoe," she said, her voice dropping as if she were sharing a secret. "I have to fake it every single time. It's pathetic. It's actually exhausting." Something inside me cracked. I could hear Zoe laughing on the other end. Laughing. Like this was some kind of joke. "I don't even want to sleep with him anymore," she continued, almost whining now. "But when I do, I just get it over with so he doesn't start asking questions. God, I can't imagine spending the rest of my life like this." I swallowed hard, my hands shaking at my sides. But it wasn't over. The other day, James was making some big romantic dinner for us, and meanwhile I was with Josh that night. She let out another carefree and amused laugh, this time louder, completely unaware that her words were tearing me apart. I gripped the doorframe so tightly my fingers ached. Josh. That name hit me like a punch to the stomach. Yeah, we had dinner first, then got a room after. It was amazing, Zoe. He actually knows what he's doing. Unlike James. Another laugh. I felt sick. My stomach twisted. My mind screamed at me to burst into the room and demand an answer, but I couldn't move. Not because I was afraid, not because I didn't want to fight, but because I knew that this wasn't just some moment of anger. This was a moment that changed everything. I had suspected something was wrong for months, but hearing it like this, hearing her laugh about it, made it all real. I took a step back, careful not to make a sound. I didn't need to hear more. I had heard enough. I didn't know how long I stood there in the hallway after that. Maybe a minute. Maybe 10. My mind was blank, my hands shaking. Then something changed. The pain was still there, but beneath it, something else started creeping in. Something sharp, something clear. Rage. I wasn't just some idiot she could use and laugh about with her sister. I wasn't just going to sit back and let her walk all over me. No. She thought I was weak, that I was blind. She was about to find out just how wrong she was. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I had a better plan. That night, while Stacey slept peacefully beside me, I took her phone. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, my heart pounding in my chest. I scrolled through her messages with Josh, each word slicing into me like a blade. "Can't stop thinking about last night," Josh wrote. "Me too. I can't wait to see you again," she replied. I exhaled sharply, my grip tightening around the phone. I kept reading. More texts, photos, plans. And then, the final blow. I saw that they were meeting again tomorrow. I stared at the screen, my mind a war zone of emotions. I had suspected. I had overheard. But now I had undeniable proof. And yet it still wasn't enough. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The next morning I left home as usual, dressed for work. But I didn't go. Instead, I parked down the street, close enough to see the house but far enough that she wouldn't notice me. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tightly my fingers felt numb. I watched the clock, the seconds dragging. Then, at exactly 11 a.m., Stacey walked out the front door. She wasn't in her usual leggings and oversized hoodie, the lazy homebody look she always gave me. From my car, I watched as she stepped onto the porch, adjusting the strap of her purse. No, today, she was dressed up. Tight jeans, a low-cut blouse, makeup, perfume. She looked stunning. Not for me. Never for me. I forced down the burning sensation in my chest and followed her at a distance. She drove straight to a small shopping plaza and pulled into the parking lot. For a second I wondered if I was wrong, if maybe she really was just running errands. Then Josh's car pulled up. I felt my stomach drop. He didn't wait. He didn't check if anyone was watching. The moment he stepped out of his car, he walked right up to my wife and kissed her. Right there, in broad daylight, like it was nothing. I gritted my teeth, my nails digging into my palm as I took out my phone. I took photos, every moment, every angle. She smiled at him, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in years. Her arms slipped around his neck as she pulled him close, melting into him. She tilted her head back, laughing, completely at ease, completely in love. With him. Then, after a few minutes, they got back into their cars and drove off. I already knew where they were going. I followed them at a careful distance, my pulse thudding in my ears. I wanted to look away, to turn the car around and pretend I never saw any of it. But I didn't. I watched them pull into the parking lot of a cheap hotel on the edge of town. Not some fancy, discreet place. No. They didn't even bother to hide it. They parked side by side. Josh got out first, walking around to open the door for her like a damn gentleman. Stacey stepped out, adjusting her blouse, smoothing her hair. Then, hand in hand, they walked through the hotel doors. I took more photos. I had all the proof I needed. But instead of feeling satisfied, I felt something else. Calm. Not the kind of calm that brings peace, but the kind that comes right before a storm. I knew exactly how I was going to end this, and I wasn't going to do it in private. No, she humiliated me in secret, but I was going to expose her in front of everyone, and I knew exactly when and where. 2 days later, we were at her parents' house for dinner. I acted normal, like nothing had changed. I smiled when I needed to, nodded at the right moments, even made small talk with her father about work. In the meantime, I had met with a lawyer the day before. The divorce process was already in motion. Stacey didn't suspect a thing. She had no idea that this would be the last time she ever sat beside me, laughing like she hadn't betrayed me in the worst way possible. Her parents had always loved me. They treated me like a son, always saying how lucky Stacey was to have me. Tonight, they would learn the truth. After dinner, everyone moved into the living room. Stacey sat beside me, her body pressed comfortably against mine like we were some picture-perfect couple. She laughed at something her mother said, sipping her wine, completely unaware that her world was about to crash down around her. I took a deep breath, my heart steady, my mind clear. Then I spoke. "There's something I need to show you." I pulled out my phone, connected it to the TV and pressed play. The first image appeared. Stacey and Josh, kissing. Gasps filled the room. The warmth in the air instantly disappeared, replaced by thick, suffocating silence. Stacey stiffened beside me. Her mother's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Her father leaned forward, his jaw tight, his face dark with anger. I let the silence stretch, let everyone absorb what they were seeing. Then, the next image flashed onto the screen. Stacey and Josh, walking into the hotel together. "What the hell is this?" Her father's voice cut through the silence like a knife. It wasn't just anger. It was something deeper. Betrayal, disappointment, shame. Stacey's wine glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the floor. Her face was pale, her breath hitching as she turned to me, eyes wide. "James," I didn't let her finish. "I found out everything, Stacey. The lies, the cheating, the night I set up a dinner for us while you were in bed with him. I know it all." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. Her father stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. He turned to her, eyes burning. "Is this true?" She swallowed hard, glancing between me, the TV, and her parents. She knew there was no escape. Her hands trembled in her lap. "Dad, is it true?" His voice was like thunder, shaking the room. Stacey flinched. Her throat bobbed as she forced out the word, "Yes." Her father exhaled sharply, shaking his head, disgusted. "I can't believe you. I raised you better than this." Her mother just stared at her, eyes glossy, disappointment written all over her face. "Mom," Stacey started, but her mother turned away. Her father's voice was sharp. "You threw away your marriage for what? Some cheap affair?" Stacey sat frozen, tears forming in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just done. She turned back to me, reaching out like she could still fix this. "James, let's talk about this. Just us." I stepped back. "There's nothing to talk about." She blinked, her lip trembling. "Please." I turned to her parents. "You've always treated me like family, and I appreciate that. But I can't stay married to someone who disrespects me like this." Then I faced her. "Go home and pack your things, Stacey. You're leaving my house tonight." She let out a choked gasp. "James." I didn't look at her. She wasn't my problem anymore. Stacey cried. She begged. She dropped every ounce of arrogance and indifference she had carried for months and replaced it with desperation. But I was done. I grabbed my keys and walked out of her parents' house without another word. She didn't follow me. I didn't expect her to. On the drive home, I took my time. I wasn't eager to see her again, to find her still in my house. So I pulled over a few blocks away and just sat there, staring at the dashboard, letting everything settle. But when I finally walked through the door, she was still there. Standing in the living room, eyes red, a half-packed suitcase at her feet. "James, please, we can fix this." I didn't even hesitate. I zipped up the suitcase and dragged it to the door, barely sparing her a glance. I laughed. "Fix this? The only reason you care now is because you got caught." She shook her head, stepping toward me, her face streaked with tears. "No, that's not true. I'll end it with Josh. I swear." I turned to her, really looking at her. The woman I once loved, the woman I thought loved me. And I felt nothing. "It doesn't matter," I said, my voice calm. "I already filed for divorce." She let out a choked gasp, her hands covering her mouth like she was just now understanding that this was real. She wasn't in control anymore. Her knees buckled and she collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. Not little, delicate tears. Broken, desperate sobs. I stood there for a moment, watching, waiting for even the smallest flicker of regret in myself. But there was nothing. No sadness, no anger. Just relief. I walked to the door, pulling it open. "Goodbye, Stacey." She hesitated, her breath hitching. James, her voice was small now. The same woman who laughed about me behind my back. The same woman who had rolled her eyes at my affection, ignored my efforts, given herself to another man while I fought for us. I nodded toward the door. Get out. Her shoulders slumped. For the first time in years, she looked small. And just like that, she was gone. That night I sat alone in my living room. No sound, no tension, just silence. But it wasn't heavy. It wasn't painful. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something. I wasn't waiting for love. I wasn't waiting for respect. I wasn't waiting for someone to choose me. I had chosen myself, and I had never felt better. Thank you for watching.